And on this week's In Focus session, we will be discussing why you should stop looking to seek more information and you should start looking to apply your learnings to create transformation in your life. Why are we talking about that? Well, I had a conversation earlier this week and it made me realize that we're living in this sort of information capitalism where everyone's going out there and trying to seek more and more information and trying to look for more and more answers and trying to find out about more and more details. And what it's actually doing is not much use for us, right? Because the more the information that you're trying to take on, more often than not, you're not actually applying that information in your life. And it's actually the application of your learnings through the information that you have that creates the transformation. Whereas if you're just looking to take on information and you're not really looking to apply those learnings in your life, you're not going to get much transformation out of that. You're just going to be taking on more and more information. You're just filling up this bucket of endless information and you're doing nothing with it. It's like basically hoarding information. Hoarding information like people hoard stuff and never use it. It's the same thing. And really, what happens is when you're seeking information is you're looking for the how-tos, you're looking for the answers, you're looking for the kind of fixes, the nitty-gritty details, the information, right? Which is cool, it serves its purpose, don't get me wrong. But when you're looking to create transformation, what you're doing is you're applying the learnings from the information that you already have. And that's what creates transformation, right? So I'll give you an example. So the conversation I had earlier this week was with a client of mine, and we were talking about reading and the amount of books that he's read over the past year. And we were talking quite a lot about, this book, that book, and all of these books on his shelf that he has that he wants to read and etc. And I asked him, I said, how many books do you reckon you read in the last sort of year or so? And his answer was around 20 or something around that kind of figure. I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of books, right? He was like, yeah, it's quite a lot. He was like quite proud. And rightly so, because 20 books in a year is quite a lot. And then I said to him, I said, okay, what's one of the books that you've read within that year that you felt really impacted you the most? So he took a look at his shelf and he said, oh, there's this book here called Essentialism, which is a book by Greg McKeown. And it's about, just doing the essential stuff in your life. I said, okay, cool. I've read that too. I said, what's the biggest learnings that you took from that book and why? And he paused and he sort of thought about it. And he said, do you know what? I actually don't know. Although I felt like I really got into that book and it really sort of impacted me at the time, I couldn't tell you one learning right now that I made from that book. So I said to him, well, why do you think that is? And he paused and he just simply said, well, I guess I didn't actually apply any of those learnings. And I was like, yeah, because you've just taken that book on for information and you haven't actually applied those learnings to create the transformation in your life. And there's a mentor of mine, an amazing coach called Steve Chandler, who talks about this a lot. And he has this amazing phrase where he says, once for information, twice for transformation. And what that means is when you read something, when you watch something, when you listen to something, you're listening to it or you're consuming it for the information that's in that thing. But when you really want to create transformation through that information, you have to listen to it more than once or watch it or whatever it is more than once. So the second time that you're listening to or watching or reading that thing, you're taking that information on from a place of transformation because you've already got the information from it, but now you're consuming it through a very different place. You're consuming it through a place where you can actually take the learnings from it and look to apply them in your life. And that's what causes transformation. So, and this shows up in all areas of life, right? So you guys know, right? I like to skateboard. I could spend the rest of the year watching all of the skateboarding videos, reading books about skateboarding, following people on Instagram who skateboard, watching all of the tutorials on how to do this trick, how to get better at that, how to do that. But if I stepped out at the end of the year onto a skateboard, I can't actually use that information because I haven't applied any of it to the actual skill of skateboarding. So for me to actually get better at skateboarding and have some transformation in my ability, I need to be applying those learnings. So it's one thing sitting there and watching a video on how to get better at this particular thing in skateboarding. And it's an entirely different practice to go out there and apply those things that I've learned through that video. And transformation really comes from being in action with the things that you're learning. Coming from that place of action and being in action is what creates the transformation. It's not taking on more and more information. That's just giving you more and more knowledge. And unless you're using that knowledge, then you're not actually doing much else with it, right? You're just storing it. You're just hoarding it, like we said. And that becomes a problem because a lot of people get stuck in this information, like capitalism, like I said, right? A lot of people get stuck in this and they think like, oh, I'm going to take on all of this information and I'm going to be so knowledgeable about this thing that when the time comes, I can just dip into this knowledge and pull out the information I want. It doesn't work like that, because unless you're actually using the information that you're learning in an applicable way and being in action with it, then you're not actually learning much from it other than just having this stored information. And, you know, you guys have heard me talk about this a million times, right? The 1% rule, doing 1% every day, right? You are far better off applying 1% of your learnings from something you've read or you've watched or you've listened to every day than you are taking on the whole of the information and then trying to just apply 10% of it at the end. Because those tiny steps of applying 1% every day, right? They're putting you in action every day. So for example, going back to the skateboarding, if I went out on my skateboard every day for 10 minutes, I'm going to pick certain things up and my skills are going to develop quicker and faster and greater than they would if I just went out once a week for an hour. Because I am putting myself in action in the situation of applying my learnings and really creating a transformation through that application. And that is so much more powerful than just taking on loads and loads of information and trying to sit there and then trying to apply it all at the end, right? The same goes with something like learning a language, right? So I'm trying to practice my Italian at the minute. And what I've noticed is the more that I am in a situation where I have to use the Italian that I'm learning, the quicker I pick up the language, the quicker I can utilize and apply my learnings. Whereas if I'm just taking on information and doing the apps and reading text or anything like that, then I'm just taking on more information. But it's not until I actually go on to try and use that information in an applicable way in a real life scenario, be it through a conversation or through, you know, even watching a film in Italian with Italian subtitles, I'm now having to use the information I have in a way that is applicable to the situation. So I'm learning quicker based on the information I have, and then I can look to build on that. And the more consistent I can be with that, the more consistent my learning and my application of the language will be. And it's really important, right? Because what happens is a lot of us just don't do this. And I've often wondered why. And I've looked at my own life and I thought, well, why don't I apply some of the learnings that I've taken on board to certain situations or certain things, right? And it comes down to one thing for me, right? It comes down to being comfortable in your comfort zone, right? Learning takes place outside of your comfort zone. Being in action takes place outside of your comfort zone, right? No transformation happens inside your own comfort zone. So you have to step out of your comfort zone to apply your learnings to create the transformation in your life. And if you're not doing that, then you're just soaking up more and more information and not using it, right? And the key to this, which is what I'm really seeing in a lot of areas, right, is making the application process and applying these learnings really effortless, right? And the more effortless you can make the application and the more kind of fun or easy you can make it for yourself, the more likely you are to go and do it. So an example being, right, if I want to work on getting fitter and stronger in the gym, right, instead of saying to myself, all right, I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week, right, that seems quite hard. That seems like quite a lot. It's quite a big commitment. Like, we've all been there and tried it, and it's tough to do that 6 days, 5 days a week, right? I'd be far better off, right? Instead of going on this mad run of like 3 weeks and going to the gym 5 times a week, I'd be far better off going to the gym twice a week consistently over 8 or 9 months. Because I'm over time, going back to that 1% rule, going back to those tiny steps and being in action, I'm spending more time in action over a longer period of time, far more consistently, which over a long term is going to benefit me far greater. But we don't do that. We look for that short term. We look for this, okay, I just need to go, and if I can, do all this stuff in this really short period of time, then I'm going to take on all of this transformation and all of these learnings, or I'm going to get fitter, I'm going to get healthier. It doesn't work like that. Like, you have to be able to apply these learnings and this information and this knowledge that you have over a longer period of time, far more consistently, even if it's in smaller chunks, to actually create the transformation. Because that's when you're getting out of your comfort zone, is you're putting yourself in a situation where you're making it easy for yourself to create this transformation, to apply these learnings, whatever those learnings are for you, and you're doing it on a consistent basis. Whereas being inside your comfort zone, not being in action, looks like the total opposite. It's just doing nothing with it. Just being okay storing this information and not doing much with it. So it's really important to create that distinction for yourself of like, if I'm in action with what I'm learning and looking to apply these learnings, I'm going to get far more out of the information that I have in terms of creating transformation, because I'm actually using the information in a way that's applicable to me. So an example being, going back to my client who read all the books, right? We ended that conversation with coming up with this idea that for the rest of the year, and he reads books like sometimes in a week, sometimes even in a few days. So he came up with this idea to really test this for himself and for him to really see the power of it. And we created this little challenge to only read 3 books for the rest of the year. And even if that means he reads them 4, 5, 6 times, or he reads them really slowly and really extracts the information from them and the learnings, and it takes him 8 weeks to read 1 book, let's see how much more you get from those books than you would if you just smash through another 10 books in the next 3-4 months. And I already know that that's going to be really helpful for him, because I've got books on my shelf that I've read some 2, 3, 4 times. And they're the books that I've really taken the information, taken the learnings, and really applied them to my own life. And it's far more powerful to be able to do that. So being more consistent, putting yourself in a place of being in action far more often, and looking to break things down and make them kind of easy and effortless, and having that 1% idea in your mind will help you to create more transformation in your life instead of just taking on more and more information. So it's really about, how are you using the information that you already have, or the information that you've taken on, in a way that applies to you to create transformation, rather than taking on more and more information. So I'd love to hear like what you get from this episode, if it's resonated with you, what your key learning is. I'd like to invite you to share that with me. Just respond to me, hit me up on the DMs and Instagram at I am Alex Manzi, and share with me the one learning that you've really got from this episode, because I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to explore what that means for you moving forward in your life. So please hit me up at I am Alex Manzi on Instagram, shoot me a DM with your one learning from this episode.